You've seen me unclothed? Then you must marry me, or we both die. HFY Sci-Fi story. I hope you're all ready for an intense story today, but before we begin, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive right into today's story. The wind howled through the metallic structure of the ship, rattling the hull as Commander Alex Tran struggled to regain control of the failing spacecraft. His heart raced as sparks flew from the control panel, and the cockpit lights flickered erratically. He had barely managed to keep the ship from spiraling into the frozen wasteland of Planet Zero's. But now, the emergency systems were failing one by one, and the planet's harsh electromagnetic storms were wreaking havoc with the ship's electronics. Alex slammed his fist against the side of the cockpit, cursing under his breath. Come on, come on. The ship bucked under him again, sending him flying against his seatbelt as the planet's surface rushed closer. With a sickening lurch, the ship hit the ground, skidding across the icy surface, its landing gear crumpling under the impact. As the dust settled and the groaning of the damaged craft became the only sound, Alex unbuckled his harness, a sharp pain shooting through his side. He wiped the blood from his forehead, glaring at the cracked cockpit window. Through the jagged glass, he could see the harsh, white landscape stretching for miles. He had crashed, and it wasn't just the ship that was broken. His chances of surviving out here alone? Slim to none. He had no idea if anyone had received his distress signal or if help would arrive in time. But he couldn't afford to wait. He suited up in his survival gear, checking his limited supplies. His communications system was dead, and his backup power cells wouldn't last long in this extreme cold. But there was a chance, a small chance, that he could make it to the nearby mountain range. Scanning the horizon, he set his sights on the faint outline of the peaks in the distance. With every step he took through the thick snow, his breath came in short, shallow bursts. The bitter wind sliced at his exposed face, and his boots sank deep into the snow with each stride. The cold burned his skin, but he had no choice but to keep moving. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something. It was a flash of movement, a figure standing tall against the stark white backdrop. Instinctively, his hand shot to the pulse rifle slung over his shoulder, but he hesitated. This figure didn't look like any hostile alien he had encountered in his years of service. She was tall, easily 8 feet, her skin the color of sunset, her long hair flowing like molten copper. And her armor? It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was made of overlapping scales, each one shimmering with a fiery glow. She stood still for a moment, her golden, cat-like eyes narrowing as they locked onto his. Her weapon, a strange hybrid between a plasma rifle and a spear, was aimed directly at his chest. Alex raised an eyebrow, trying to mask his surprise. Well, hello there, he said, keeping his voice calm and steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. I don't suppose you'd be interested in a friendly chat? The alien queen's lips twitched slightly, a sound escaping her that was somewhere between a laugh and a growl. You are either very brave or very foolish to enter the sovereign territory of the Silurian Empire, human. Her voice was deep and melodic, and despite the tension, Alex couldn't help but find it mesmerizing. Would you believe I'm just lost? He asked, flashing her a grin. Commander Alex Tran, at your service. And you are? The alien's eyes flickered with what could only be described as amusement. I am Queen Tiara of the Silurian Empire. And you are my prisoner. Alex chuckled, his hand still resting lightly on the grip of his rifle, but not aiming it at her. Well, Your Majesty, I'm flattered by the attention, but I typically prefer dinner before being taken prisoner. The queen's eyes gleamed, but she didn't waver. You think your bravado will save you? She asked, her tone almost mocking. Not bravado, Alex replied, his smile widening. Just good manners. Besides, you haven't captured me yet. He gave her a wink, his mind already calculating his next move. His suit systems had locked onto her weapon's energy signature, but he knew better than to underestimate the power of an alien queen. I need shelter before I freeze to death, he added, his voice taking on a more serious tone. Maybe we could continue this conversation somewhere warmer? The queen didn't respond immediately, her expression unreadable as the wind whipped around them. But after a long pause, she spoke. "Your suggestion has merit," she said, her voice colder now. "You will accompany me as my prisoner." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Lead the way, Your Majesty. Though I should warn you, I'm not great at following orders." As they trudged through the deep snow, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was only the beginning of something far more complicated and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. As Alex trudged through the thick snow, his breath visible in the freezing air, he could feel the weight of the queen's presence behind him. Tiara, her towering frame moving with an effortless grace, kept pace beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the desolate landscape. The wind howled louder as they ventured deeper into the mountain range, the snow crunching beneath their boots. Despite the biting cold, a strange warmth seemed to emanate from her, a stark contrast to the harsh environment surrounding them. Alex had no idea what he had gotten himself into. He had come to this planet for a routine survey, and now, here he was, being escorted by an alien queen. His mind raced as he tried to piece together everything that had happened in such a short time. He could barely believe it himself. One moment, he had been desperately trying to save his ship, and the next, he was face to face with this imposing figure, this queen who claimed him as her prisoner. But there was something in her eyes, something beyond the cold calculation of royalty. Alex had seen it the moment their gazes locked, curiosity. A strange, almost human curiosity that he couldn't ignore. He glanced over at her again, trying to make sense of her. Her fiery orange armor gleamed in the dim light of the snowstorm, each scale catching the little light that pierced through the clouds above. He had been trained to handle alien encounters, but this felt different. She wasn't like the hostile species he had dealt with before. "Your Majesty," he started, trying to break the silence between them. "I have to ask, why me? Why not just leave me to die here?" Tiara's golden eyes flickered toward him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "You are a human," she said, her voice calm, but with a trace of something else. A deep curiosity, almost like she was studying him. "And humans are unpredictable. That makes you valuable." Alex frowned. "I'm not sure how to take that." "I find you intriguing," she continued, her tone softening just slightly. "There is something about your species that is unlike any other." Alex smirked, feeling the heat from the fire in her words, even if her tone remained neutral. "Is that your way of saying you're impressed?" "It is my way of saying that your survival instincts are admirable," she replied, her voice still steady, but there was a slight shift in her posture. "I've never met a human who didn't fight for survival." "Well, we don't give up easily," Alex said with a shrug, trying to keep things light. "Besides, I didn't have much of a choice, did I?" Tiara's lips curled into a faint smile, and for a moment, she looked almost human. Alex found himself staring at her, caught off guard by the shift in her demeanor. The cold, unyielding queen was gone for a split second, replaced by something different. Then the moment passed, and Tiara's expression became once again unreadable. "We're almost there," she said, nodding toward the distant structure that loomed through the swirling snowstorm. Alex squinted his eyes, trying to make out the details. It looked like an old fortress, its tall towers barely visible through the storm. The air around them had grown colder, and Alex could feel his body protesting against the freezing temperatures. He had never been this far out on a planet before, and the isolation of the place was unnerving. He had to rely on Tiara now. She was his only hope. They reached the fortress, and Alex's eyes widened in surprise. The structure was far more advanced than he had anticipated. It wasn't just an old fort. It looked like something far older, something built with technology that seemed out of place in such a remote, barren world. As they entered the large stone doors, the temperature inside was noticeably warmer. The walls were lined with strange, glowing crystals that cast an eerie light across the cold stone. Tiara led him through the dimly lit hallways, her steps echoing in the silence. "What is this place?" Alex asked, his voice low. "This is my sanctuary," Tiara said, her gaze turning ahead, though her words seemed to hold a layer of meaning he couldn't quite grasp. "You're safe here for now." Alex nodded, trying to take in his surroundings. "For now," he echoed, his mind working through the possibilities. As much as he wanted to believe he was safe, the situation was too strange, too complicated for him to just accept it at face value. He was a prisoner here, no matter what she called it, and he had no idea what the queen really wanted from him. The weight of uncertainty hung in the air between them as they walked deeper into the fortress, Alex's thoughts racing with questions he wasn't sure he would ever get the answers to. Tiara stopped in front of a large door, her hand hovering over the strange symbols carved into the stone. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a spacious room beyond, its walls adorned with more of those glowing crystals. It was both beautiful and unsettling, the air thick with an ancient energy that seemed to pulse through the space. Tiara turned to him, her golden eyes locking onto his. "Rest now, human," she said, her voice low and almost gentle. "You will need your strength." Alex was about to respond when the door slammed shut behind him with a resounding thud. The room went dark, save for the faint glow of the crystals. He was alone now, alone with his thoughts, alone with the queen's strange, unsettling invitation. I woke up to the soft hum of unfamiliar machinery and the flickering glow of strange crystals. The room was dark, save for the faint light that pulsed from the walls, casting long shadows on the stone floor. My head was pounding, and for a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. The events of the last few hours came rushing back in a flood. The crash, the blizzard, the alien queen, and her strange claim that I was her prisoner. I groaned and sat up, feeling the chill in the air and the weight of my survival suit still on me. I could feel the bruises from the crash, and my muscles ached from the cold, but I was alive. For now, at least. As I glanced around, I could see that the room was more like a chamber, with tall, vaulted ceilings and strange carvings on the walls, each one glowing faintly. The air was thick, almost as if it were charged with energy. I stood up, my legs wobbly at first, then slowly found my footing. The door had been shut behind me, but now I could hear soft footsteps from outside. Someone was approaching. I froze, my hand instinctively going to my sidearm, even though I knew it was useless against what I was dealing with here. The door creaked open, and in walked Queen Tiara. Her tall frame filled the doorway, her fiery orange armor gleaming in the dim light. She didn't speak immediately, just stood there, watching me. For a moment, I was caught in her gaze, those golden, cat-like eyes that seemed to see straight through me. I had to admit, there was something magnetic about her. Even though she was a queen, and I was a prisoner, I couldn't help but feel an odd pull toward her. "You slept well," she said finally, her voice smooth, almost like silk, but with an edge to it. "I trust you're feeling better." I frowned, rubbing my eyes as I tried to shake off the lingering effects of the crash. "Better, sure," I said, my voice rough. "But I'm not sure I trust this place. Or you, for that matter." Tiara stepped into the room, her presence filling the space, making the shadows seem to shrink. "I do not expect you to trust me," she said, her tone calm but firm. "You're here because I chose you, human. You have no choice but to stay for now." I narrowed my eyes, refusing to let her intimidation get the better of me. "I'm not staying anywhere until I know why I'm here, what you want from me." Tiara tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as if she was studying me. "What I want from you," she said slowly, "is to understand you. Your species is unlike anything I've encountered. Humans are unpredictable, and that is something I find fascinating." "Fascinating?" I raised an eyebrow. "I'm just a guy who crashed on your planet." "No," she said, her voice softening for the first time. "You are more than that. I see it in you. The way you survived the crash, the way you hold yourself even in the face of danger. You humans have a unique kind of strength." She stepped closer, her tall form looming over me. "And I believe that strength could be useful to me." I swallowed, my pulse quickening as she closed the distance between us. "Useful? How?" She smiled, a faint curve of her lips that sent a shiver down my spine. "I have my reasons," she said, her voice lowering. "But first, you must prove yourself worthy." I took a step back, unsure of what she meant. "Prove myself? How? What do you want me to do?" Tiara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder, her fingers surprisingly warm despite the cold surroundings. "You'll know when the time comes," she said, her eyes locking onto mine, her grip tightening just a little. "For now, rest. You're not going anywhere until I decide what to do with you." I opened my mouth to protest, but she turned and walked out of the room without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. What had just happened? And what exactly did she mean by proving myself? The uncertainty was maddening. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. There was something about me, something that made me different. But I had no idea what it was, and Tiara wasn't going to make it easy for me to figure it out. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be a way to get back to my ship and figure out what was going on. But for now, I was stuck here, and I had no choice but to wait. Wait for her to decide what came next. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever came next, it would change everything. I spent the next few hours pacing the stone floor of the chamber, the weight of the Queen's words hanging heavy in my mind. Prove yourself worthy. What the hell did she mean by that? Was she talking about surviving the crash, or was it something else? I didn't know much about alien cultures, but from the look in her eyes, it wasn't going to be something simple. I could still feel the warmth of her touch on my shoulder, and for some strange reason, it made my skin tingle, like her presence was somehow seared into me. I shook my head, trying to clear my thoughts. There was no time for that. I had to focus. I had to find a way out of here. My survival instincts kicked in. I needed to think, to plan. It wasn't just about surviving the crash anymore. It was about surviving her. After a while, the door to my chamber opened again, and Tiara stepped inside. This time, she wasn't alone. A group of her guards followed her in, their eyes scanning me warily. Tiara's expression was unreadable as she looked at me. "It's time," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "Follow me." Without waiting for a response, she turned and strode toward the door. I hesitated for a moment before following her, my pulse quickening. Where was she taking me now? We moved through the dimly lit hallways of the fortress, the guards walking silently beside us. The air was thick with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My instincts screamed at me to stay alert, to stay one step ahead of whatever game Tiara was playing. We finally reached a large chamber, one that looked even older than the rest of the fortress. The walls were lined with strange symbols and glowing crystals, casting an eerie light on the floor. In the center of the room was a raised platform, and on it stood a large stone pedestal. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in my gut. Tiara didn't answer immediately. She stood in front of the pedestal, her gaze fixed on the stone surface. "This is where you will prove your worth," she said, her tone low and almost expectant. I narrowed my eyes. And how exactly am I supposed to do that? She finally turned to face me, her golden eyes intense. "You will face a trial," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "A test of your strength, your will, and your survival instincts. If you succeed, you will have earned your place here. And if I fail?" I asked, a chill running down my spine. "You won't fail," she replied with a small, almost predatory smile. "I'm confident you will rise to the challenge." My heart raced as she gestured for me to step forward. As I moved toward the pedestal, a sudden realization hit me. This wasn't just a test of physical strength. It was a test of my mind, my ability to adapt, to survive in a world that wasn't my own. I looked at the pedestal once more. It was covered in intricate carvings, and in the center was a small, glowing crystal. Tiara stepped closer to me, her presence towering over me. "This is no ordinary test," she said, her voice a whisper. "You will have to face your greatest fears, the things that haunt you, the things you are running from. Only then will you truly prove yourself." I stared at her, unsure of what to say. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever this trial was going to be, but I had no choice. If I wanted to survive, if I wanted to get out of here, I had to do this. Slowly, I reached out toward the glowing crystal. The moment my fingers brushed against it, the world around me seemed to shudder. The air grew thick, heavy, and my vision blurred. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. The room seemed to spin around me, and I felt like I was falling into something dark and cold. Then, suddenly, everything went black. I gasped, my breath coming in shallow bursts, and when my eyes opened again, I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was back home, standing in the middle of a street I had not seen in years. The familiar sights of my old neighborhood surrounded me, but something was wrong. It was as though everything was distorted, as though time itself was bending. My heart raced as I saw my childhood home in the distance. I knew what was coming. It was the day I lost everything. The day my parents died. I turned, trying to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I could hear the sounds of the accident, the screech of tires, the crash. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was frozen in place, helpless to do anything but watch as my past played out before me. Suddenly, a voice cut through the darkness. "You are not alone," the voice said, calm and soothing, though it sent a shiver down my spine. "Face your fear. Face your past." I looked around, trying to find the source of the voice, but there was no one there. I was alone, trapped in this nightmare. But I knew what I had to do. I had to confront it. I had to face the pain, the guilt, the fear. I took a deep breath and forced myself to move forward, step by step, toward the memories that haunted me. As I approached the wreckage, I felt a strange warmth wash over me, and the fear began to fade. The darkness that had gripped me loosened, and I realized that I wasn't just reliving my past. I was learning from it. I was confronting the fear that had held me back for so long. With each step, I felt stronger, more in control. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the vision shattered. The darkness dissolved, and I was back in the chamber, standing in front of the pedestal. I took a shaky breath, my heart still racing, but I knew something had changed. I had faced my fear, and I had survived. Tiara was watching me, her gaze unreadable, but there was something in her eyes, something that told me I had passed. She nodded slightly. "Well done, human," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You have proven your worth." I stood there, my heart still pounding from the trial, trying to process what had just happened. The room was still as cold and dim as it had been when I first entered, but now, there was a strange warmth inside me. The fear, the memories that had plagued me for years, they were still there, but they no longer had the same grip on me. I had faced them, and I had survived. The voice of Queen Tiara broke through my thoughts, her words cutting through the silence. "You have passed the trial," she said, her tone steady, though I noticed a hint of approval in her eyes. "You are stronger than I anticipated." I turned to face her, still trying to catch my breath, but there was no denying that something inside me had changed. "What now?" I asked, my voice hoarse but determined. "Now," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Now you have earned my trust. You will help me with something greater than your survival." My brow furrowed in confusion. "Help you? With what?" Tiara stepped closer, her figure looming over me. "There is a threat to my empire, one that I cannot face alone," she said, her voice dropping to a low whisper. "A threat that could destroy everything I have fought for, everything my people have built. You will help me stop it." I felt the weight of her words settle on me like a heavy burden. My mind raced. I had just survived a trial of strength, but now she was asking me to help her save her empire? I had no idea what I was getting into, but at this moment, I didn't have a choice. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, my voice steady, though I still had no idea what lay ahead. "I need you to infiltrate a stronghold," Tiara said, her golden eyes intense. "A rebel faction has been rising within my empire, and they are gaining power. They have resources, and they have an army that threatens to tear everything apart. You will go inside, find out what they are planning, and stop them before it's too late." My pulse quickened. A rebel faction? In her own empire? It didn't make sense. But the look in her eyes told me she wasn't lying. This was serious. "How do I even get inside?" I asked, the skepticism clear in my voice. "That is where you come in," Tiara said, her lips curving into a small smile. "You will be my envoy, an outsider who will be able to gain their trust. They will never suspect you are working for me." I frowned, still unsure of how this would work. "So, I'll be a spy? A double agent?" Tiara's eyes softened slightly, but her expression remained firm. "Yes, you will be my eyes and ears. I know this is a dangerous task, but I believe you have the skills to pull it off." I looked at her, unsure of how to respond. I was a survivor, yes, but this was different. This was espionage, danger on a whole new level. I'd be risking everything to help her, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. But as I stood there, looking into her eyes, something told me this was bigger than just me. This wasn't about survival anymore, it was about something greater. I had a choice to make. I could walk away, risk everything by trying to escape, or I could stay and help her. I wasn't sure what she saw in me, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to back down. I nodded, taking a deep breath. I'll do it, I said, my voice firm with determination. I'll help you stop this rebellion. Tiara's gaze softened for a moment, and she placed a hand on my shoulder once again. I knew you would, she said, her voice warm, though still carrying the weight of command. You're stronger than you know. This is only the beginning, human. But I will stand by you, just as you will stand by me. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear. I was in this now, whether I liked it or not. The rebellion she spoke of was real, and I had just become part of it. A small part, yes, but part of something much bigger than I could have ever imagined. As Tiara turned and walked toward the door, I followed her, my thoughts racing. I had no idea what I was about to face, but I knew this was my chance to prove myself, not just to her, but to myself. And as the door closed behind us, I took my first step into a world that was far beyond anything I had ever known. I followed Tiara through the dark hallways of the fortress, my mind spinning with the weight of her words. I was about to be a spy, a double agent infiltrating a rebel faction within her empire. It was insane, dangerous, and everything I had been trained to avoid. Yet, here I was, willingly walking into the heart of uncertainty. As we reached the grand central chamber, Tiara stopped and turned to face me, her expression hardening once again. There is no turning back now, human, she said, her voice cool and commanding. The path ahead will be fraught with peril. Trust no one, not even those who appear to be allies. I nodded, feeling the gravity of her words settle deep inside me. Understood, I said, my voice steady despite the uncertainty bubbling inside me. Who exactly am I supposed to trust in there, then? Tiara's gaze never wavered as she walked to a nearby table, her fingers brushing over a collection of maps and documents. You must gain their trust, but always be aware of their true motives. The rebels are fractured, but they are dangerous. They will test you, push you, and if you show weakness, they will turn on you. Stay vigilant, and remember your role. You are an envoy, an outsider with no ties to my empire. Use that to your advantage. I took a deep breath, trying to prepare myself for what was coming. And what do I do once I'm inside? How do I get close enough to learn what they're planning? You will be given a cover story, Tiara explained, her tone calm but precise. You will pose as a mercenary, someone seeking work among the rebels. They will be eager to recruit you, but you must be careful. Your true objective is to find out who is funding their operations and where they're hiding their weapons. Once you have that information, you'll send it back to me. And if I can't get the information? I asked, my stomach tightening at the thought of failure. Tiara's eyes softened for a brief moment, though the cold authority never left her voice. If you can't gather the information, you will return empty-handed. But you will not fail, human. I have seen your resolve. I believe in you. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Tiara believed in me. I wasn't sure if it was because she genuinely thought I was capable, or if it was because she had no other choice but to rely on me. Either way, I couldn't afford to fail. I had to succeed, for her, for myself, and for the empire she was trying to protect. How much time do I have before I go in? I asked, trying to focus on the practicalities of the mission. You will leave within the week, Tiara replied, her eyes narrowing as if she were already calculating the logistics. I have a contact who will get you inside the rebel stronghold. Once there, you'll make your move. But remember, the rebels are not like the enemies you've faced before. They are ruthless and have no patience for failure. My heart was racing again as the weight of her expectations hit me. I had no experience with undercover work. This wasn't some straightforward survival mission. It was a test of my ability to deceive, to manipulate, and to stay one step ahead of enemies who would kill me without hesitation. I won't let you down, I said, my voice firm. Tiara studied me for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Good. You'll need to be prepared. I will give you everything you need to succeed, but the rest is up to you. She turned and motioned for me to follow her down another corridor. As we walked, I couldn't help but wonder what the rebels were planning and why they had risen against her empire. Tiara hadn't shared much about the faction or their leaders, but I had a feeling that the answers I was seeking wouldn't come easily. When we reached a secure chamber deep within the fortress, Tiara handed me a small device. It was a communication tool designed to send encrypted messages back to her, and it would be my lifeline once I was inside the rebel stronghold. Use this to report back to me, she said, her voice steady. Do not fail to keep your contact open. The longer we stay in the dark, the more dangerous the situation becomes. I took the device from her, feeling the weight of it in my palm. It was small, unassuming, but I knew it held my future. I'll keep it open, I promised. Tiara gave me one last look, her expression unreadable. I believe in you, human. Do not disappoint me. With those final words, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the chamber with my thoughts. I had no idea what awaited me, but I knew one thing for sure. This mission was unlike anything I had ever faced, and failure was not an option. I stood in the secure chamber, the small communication device from Tiara now firmly in my hand. My mind was racing as I prepared myself for the task ahead. In less than a week, I would be infiltrating the rebel stronghold, posing as a mercenary, and gaining their trust to gather crucial information about their plans. It seemed straightforward enough, but something about it didn't sit right with me. These rebels, whoever they were not like the usual enemies I had faced. They were not motivated by simple conquest or greed. There was something deeper, more personal about their fight, something that made them dangerous. As I ran my fingers over the device, the weight of Tiara's words echoed in my mind. The longer we stay in the dark, the more dangerous the situation becomes. I had a feeling that she was right. Time was of the essence, and every second I wasted could put the Empire, and my life, at risk. The plan was simple. Infiltrate the rebels, gain their trust, and uncover their resources, their leaders, and the key to their weapons. But I knew it wouldn't be that easy. Trust was a fragile thing, and if I showed even the slightest hint of weakness, I would be exposed. I had to become someone else, someone who wasn't a member of Tiara's empire, someone who was just another mercenary looking for work. The thought of lying, of pretending to be something I wasn't, didn't sit well with me. But I had no choice. I had made my decision. Tiara was counting on me, and I couldn't afford to fail. I spent the next few days preparing, going over every detail of the mission in my mind, trying to anticipate every possible scenario. I had to be ready for anything. I knew that the rebels were ruthless, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill me if they found out who I really was. My training had taught me how to survive, but this was different. This was about deception, manipulation, and blending in. When the day came, I boarded the transport that would take me to the rebel stronghold, my heart pounding in my chest. The journey was long and uneventful, and by the time we arrived, I had gone over my cover story 1,000 times in my mind. I was a mercenary looking for work, someone who had no allegiance to anyone but himself. The rebel stronghold was a fortress, hidden deep within a mountain range, surrounded by layers of security. I knew getting inside would be no easy task. But as I stood before the massive gates, I steeled myself. This was it. There was no turning back now. The gates creaked open, revealing a group of armed rebels standing guard. They didn't say anything at first, just studied me with cold, calculating eyes. I kept my head down, my posture relaxed, trying to appear non-threatening. The leader, a tall, scarred man with a harsh expression, stepped forward. "What do you want, mercenary?" he asked, his voice gruff. I lifted my head slightly, meeting his gaze. "I'm here for work," I said, my voice steady. "I've heard about your cause, and I'm willing to fight for it. But I need to see what I'm getting into first." The man studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He motioned for me to follow him, and I did, keeping my movements slow and deliberate. I had to appear confident, like I knew exactly what I was doing. As we walked deeper into the stronghold, I took in my surroundings. The place was a mess, crude, hastily constructed walls, makeshift tents, and a constant buzz of activity. It wasn't anything like the order and discipline of Tiara's fortress. This was a place of chaos, but it was chaos with a purpose. I could feel the tension in the air. These rebels were driven by something more than just a desire to overthrow a queen. They were driven by a cause, a belief that they were fighting for something greater than themselves. The man led me to a small, dimly lit room at the back of the compound. "Wait here," he said, before walking out. I nodded, taking a seat at the small wooden table in the center of the room. The air was thick with smoke, and the faint smell of something burning lingered in the air. It was strange, but I couldn't deny the sense of purpose that hung over the rebels. I had to admit, they weren't just a ragtag group of dissidents. They were a force to be reckoned with. As I sat there, my thoughts turned to Tiara and her empire. She had trusted me with this mission, and I couldn't afford to let her down. I had to succeed. I had to find out what the rebels were planning and report back to her. But as the minutes ticked by, the weight of the task ahead of me pressed down on me more and more. I had come here to infiltrate, to gather information, but the longer I stayed, the more I began to question the mission itself. Who were these rebels really? And what if their cause was something worth fighting for? Just then, the door to the room opened, and the man returned. He looked me up and down, then gave a small nod. "You're in," he said. "But first, we need to see if you're really ready to fight for us." I stood there, my hands gripping the edges of the wooden table as the man, the rebel leader, sized me up. His piercing eyes scanned my face, and I could feel the weight of his judgment pressing down on me. "You're in," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "But first, we need to see if you're really ready to fight for us." I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" I asked, keeping my tone even, despite the confusion swirling inside me. "We don't just let anyone into our ranks," he replied, stepping closer. "You want to be part of this? You need to prove you're willing to bleed for it. There's a mission coming up. If you want to be one of us, you'll join us." I swallowed hard, my heart beating faster at the thought of what he was implying. Was this some sort of initiation? A test to prove my loyalty? "What's the mission?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The man didn't answer immediately, instead motioning for me to follow him. I had no choice but to comply, my mind racing as I wondered what I was getting myself into. He led me through the maze of tents and makeshift structures that made up the rebel stronghold, the noise of the camp growing louder with every step. The rebels here were a far cry from the disciplined soldiers I was used to back at Tiara's fortress. They were scrappy, determined, but disorganized, like a wild pack of wolves desperate for their cause. We reached the far side of the camp, where a few rebels were gathered around a table, looking over maps and planning their next move. The leader gestured toward them, his eyes narrowing. "We're preparing for an assault," he said, his voice low. "We've been tracking a convoy that carries weapons and supplies for the Empire. It's a prime target. You'll be with us when we attack." My stomach tightened. I had only just arrived, and already they were asking me to fight, to kill, to help destroy the very empire I was supposed to be spying on. "You want me to go with you and fight these people?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You want me to fight for the rebels?" The leader turned to face me, his eyes hard. "It's not about fighting for the rebels," he said, his voice thick with conviction. "It's about fighting for what's right. The Empire has taken everything from us. Our homes, our families, our futures. We're fighting to take it back. And if you're going to be part of this, you have to be willing to fight for that, too." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had seen the Empire's brutality firsthand, but this wasn't the same as fighting against a foreign enemy. These were rebels, people who were desperate, willing to do anything to take down the Empire. And yet, they were right about one thing. The Empire had taken everything from them. I was supposed to be a spy, a double agent working for Tiara. But the more I listened to the leader's words, the more I began to question everything I thought I knew. Was Tiara's empire really the right side in this fight? I clenched my fists, feeling the weight of the decision hanging over me. "All right," I said, my voice firm. "I'll go with you. I'll fight. But you better be ready to keep your word. I'm not doing this for free." The leader studied me for a moment before nodding. "You'll earn your place here. But remember, once you commit, there's no turning back." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, unsure of what I had just signed up for. The rebels weren't the only ones with a cause. I had my own mission, my own goal. I had to get inside their ranks, learn what they were planning, and report back to Tiara. But now, everything was different. I had just made a choice that could change everything. The rebellion, the Empire, Tiara. I was no longer sure where my loyalties truly lay. I walked back to my temporary quarters, my mind swirling with questions and doubts. What if the rebels were right? What if they weren't the enemy, but the victims of an unjust empire? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts clouding my mind. I couldn't afford to get caught up in this. I had a mission to complete. I had to gather information. I had to survive. But deep down, I knew that the line between right and wrong was never as clear as I had once thought. The next day, the assault began. We were ready, or at least, I hoped we were. The convoy was supposed to be carrying valuable supplies, and if the rebels could seize it, they would be one step closer to challenging the Empire's control. I geared up alongside the others, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on my chest. This was it, the point of no return. As we moved out, the sounds of the camp faded behind us, replaced by the sound of boots crunching through snow. The rebel leader was ahead, his back straight and his expression grim. "This is it," he said, looking back at me. "Let's make sure they know what happens when they mess with us." My pulse quickened. This was real now. I was no longer just a spy. I was a part of this fight, whether I wanted to be or not. I followed the rebels through the dense forest, my heart pounding as the sounds of boots crunching through the snow filled the air. The leader was in front, moving with purpose, and I did my best to keep pace, trying to blend in, trying to be just another mercenary among them. But the weight of my mission pressed on my chest. I had to stay focused. The convoy wasn't far ahead, and the plan was simple. We would ambush it, take the supplies, and get out before the Empire's forces even knew what hit them. The deeper we moved into the forest, the more the tension grew. The rebels were silent, focused, their eyes darting around, scanning for any sign of danger. The leader kept his eyes straight ahead, his jaw clenched, but there was no doubt he was ready for whatever was to come. My mind was still racing. The closer we got, the more conflicted I felt. I was supposed to be infiltrating this group, learning their plans, gathering intel for Tiara, but now, here I was, about to join them in a fight against her empire. I knew I had to stay true to my mission, but there was a part of me that felt for these rebels. They weren't just a group of criminals. They were people who had lost everything, fighting for a cause they believed in. I couldn't help but question if I was on the right side of this war. As we neared the convoy's location, the leader gave a sharp signal. The rebels stopped, crouching low, their eyes scanning the area. I did the same, crouching in the snow, my pulse racing. "Get ready," the leader whispered, his voice tight with anticipation. "Once we move, we don't stop." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. This was it. There was no turning back now. The sound of engines grew louder as the convoy came into view. 2 armored transport vehicles, loaded with supplies, were slowly making their way down the narrow path through the forest. The rebels were ready, their weapons drawn, their bodies tense. The leader gave another signal, and in an instant, the ambush was on. The rebels charged from their hiding spots, shouting as they stormed the convoy. The first shots rang out, the crack of gunfire echoing through the trees. I stayed low, following the leader's lead, my weapon raised. I had no intention of letting the rebels down, not now. I aimed carefully, firing at the guards who were trying to return fire, picking them off one by one. The convoy was in chaos. The rebels were overwhelming them, their ferocity unmatched. But as the battle raged, I couldn't help but notice something strange. The convoy wasn't just carrying supplies. There was something else hidden in the back of the transport, something that didn't belong. A shipment of weapons, weapons that could tip the balance of the war in the rebels' favor. My heart sank. This wasn't just a mission for supplies. This was a strategic move to take down the Empire's defenses. I quickly turned to the leader, who was directing his forces, shouting orders to ensure the convoy didn't escape. "We need to secure the weapons," I said, my voice steady, though the weight of the revelation hung heavy on me. The leader looked at me, his eyes narrowing as if he were calculating the risks. "Get to the back of the convoy," he ordered. "But make it quick. We're not in this for long." I nodded and sprinted towards the rear of the transport, dodging bullets and debris as the battle raged on around me. I reached the back of the convoy and found what I feared, a stash of powerful weaponry, enough to change the course of the war. But there was something else here too, something that made my blood run cold. Among the crates of weapons, I saw something I recognized. A familiar insignia. The Empire's insignia. The weapons weren't just for the rebels. They were being supplied by the Empire itself. My heart raced as the implications hit me. The rebels weren't just fighting against the Empire. They were being manipulated, controlled. They were being set up to be used as pawns in a game they didn't even know they were part of. I turned back, my mind reeling. What did this mean? What was Tiara's role in all of this? Had she known about this? I had to know the truth. But I couldn't think about that now. I had a mission to complete. I quickly signaled to the leader that I had secured the weapons. The battle was winding down, and the rebels were starting to pull back, but there was no time to waste. I needed to get back to Tiara, get back to the Empire, and report everything I had learned. The leader nodded as I returned, but his expression was grim. "We have what we need," he said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Let's get out of here. We made our way back through the forest, the sound of the retreating convoy still echoing behind us. My mind was a whirlwind, questions swirling around me. Who was really in control here? The Empire? The rebels? Or was there someone else pulling the strings from behind the scenes? I had no answers, but one thing was clear. This mission was far from over, and the truth was much darker than I had ever imagined. As we returned to the rebel stronghold, I knew that I would have to report back to Tiara, but I wasn't sure what I would say. I wasn't sure what side I was on anymore.